Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. Today we're diving deep into equine dentistry with a very special guest, Spencer LaFlure. Spencer is the founder of the Center for Neuromuscular-Based Horse Dentistry, a practice that goes far beyond the traditional dental care that is performed on most horses today. Many horse owners have limited knowledge about what is happening and why when their horse receives a routine dental or float. In my experience, many practitioners are happy to share their knowledge of what is happening and why during a dental exam, but they are unknowingly wearing blinders that prevent them from seeing the bigger picture. This can be a controversial subject and one that is not always easy to discuss with your veterinarian. Neuromuscular-based horse dentistry recognizes what Spencer terms the energy grid, the primo-vascular system that connects a horse's jaw alignment to their neuromuscular and proprioceptive systems. By making precise adjustments to both incisors and molar tables, this method restores anatomically correct dental inclination, which then allows the horse's mandible complete natural movement, both side to side and forward and back motion. This has a profound effect on a horse's whole body and way of going, particularly if they have only ever received traditional teeth floating in the past. Neuromuscular-based horse dentistry isn't just changing how we think about our equine's teeth, it's revolutionizing our understanding of equine wellness from the inside out. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, welcome Spencer. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about these things. There's quite a few aspects to cover, but I'll tell you where I'd like to start and why, and then we can just go from there with wherever it takes us, if that works for you.
Yes, it does.
Okay. I wanted to start by having you explain some of the key differences between neuromuscular-based dentistry and other kinds of dentistry, and perhaps, more importantly, the kinds of patterns and symptoms that you have seen resolved with this kind of care.
Sure.
I think it's important to start there because even as an equine professional, I would listen to what was said during my horse's, traditional dental exams. And I would look in the mouth and I would feel the things and everything frankly made sense at the time. In hindsight, I realized that it made sense because the message was being delivered by a trustworthy professional who is confident in the method they're taught, and not because it actually makes sense for the horse's body,
Yes.
And it was definitely, even as a professional who had a lot of time to invest into thinking about these things, it was really easy to assume that everything they said was correct and complete and just not think about it again until the next year, and it would just get repeated. And I had no problem with my horse's teeth. I didn't seek out this different kind of care because I had a problem with my horse's mouth, or I didn't think I was seeking it out for any problem. I frankly only found it because I am lucky enough to have other professionals that opened my eyes to it. It's not because I had some big glaring mouth problem I was trying to solve. And so I think if people can kind of hear that side of it and then take in the rest of the information with that lens, it maybe will be a little more clear why they should look deeper into it themselves.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'm going to start out with an answer that requires nothing other than somebody listen, think about how fast it was done, and then think about how fast it was done after the horse was rebalanced via neuromuscular horse dentistry. Okay, so just an example. All right, in San Antonio one year, the separation between first and I believe 10th and 11th was thousandths of a second. Okay, thousandths of a second, right? Take a horse that was running 14th, and I'm just talking hypothetically. Okay, you take that horse that's 14th by, again, thousandths of a second. Balance his mouth according to what we're talking about, and we'll get into that more in depth in a moment. But you can beat them by as much as a half to a full second on your best time. Just take that off right away. So what we're talking about is really, how do I say, very shaky when it comes to what people have believed dentistry is. And not just horse dentistry, any form of dentistry. What does it do? How does it do it? So I didn't mean to jump too far off, but I wanted to talk about what you can do in time, because so many people traditionally try to shave those seconds. But what if somebody gave you the key to, here, this is a half to a full second faster. All you got to do is do this. But I get it. I hear where you're coming from as a professional. For 25, 27 years, I started out thinking about natural balance. There was a lot of that going on back then. But then I became aware that you do not have the same type of what I want to say, environment for the horse from one place to the next, from being stalled to not stalled, from being in sandy soil to clay soil, and all of that. The more important part of it was to create an energetic grid that the horse could operate on, or a person. And when you get that kind of balance, it's just amazing, because what you see in 24, 48, 72 hours as far as how a horse stands, instantly they all stand square. And I mean, I've yet to do a horse ever that in very short time of starting to work on them, they will square up. And not to get too far off on your question there, but I felt like that was something we need to start with, because it is so different.
For some people, I think that's exactly the kind of simple information they need to hear to look further into it,
Right.
There's some people that it's like, blah, 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 all these details. I don't know what you're talking about. So they just
Yes, ma'am. Well, and for
know?
25 to 27 years, I've irritated people with what I'm thinking about now. And like I said, the natural balance thing, it didn't work. I mean, if we had, hundreds of thousands of acres, and we had natural selection and all the other things that go with it to produce the horse we're talking about, yeah, that's all got a relativity. But what happens is you find out it's like the environment changes so drastically. I mean, you take horses from Hawaii and then go to Nevada, go to West Texas, go to Kentucky. All of those changes are huge for a horse. We're still, kind of facilitating on whatever we're eating and doing all right. But I think that after a lot of years of coming close, with what the answer was and then how to balance. And for the most part, it's just do the opposite of what everybody else already did. Instead of flattening out an occlusal surface, put angle back in it. Don't worry about the edge, because the edge was created by the fact that you have poor biomechanics in the mouth due to restrictions in inclination. Well, you say, how do I fix that? Well, like I said, if you're talking about your top arcade of teeth, you start there. You actually run your hand over the palatal arch. You'll find that you find a speed bump back there. If you do, that's the palatal rim. That rim needs to be addressed, like a foot that has flared, or there's too much toe, not enough heel. Well, we all know the answers to those questions. But the thing that we have to learn about is, where do I start? Well, that's where you start. And once you get that speed bump addressed to its correct anatomical alignment, then you can start to figure out what the bottom should do. And once you put that inclination in, what you get is restored AP and lateral translation. Well, all of a sudden, you'll see your temporalis muscles on your horse's head start to equal up. And it's amazing how people just don't see your masseter muscles in the face. On the left side, they'll all be stringy and tight from traditional dentistry, and the right side will be, fairly relaxed, but a much bigger body of a muscle. And that'll be true in your shoulders and your hindquarters.
Now you mentioned something that I think is the main piece of what was at least talked about to me with traditional dentistry, and that was these sharp points. I think people will have you put your hand in and feel how sharp this is, and we're going to smooth this all out. I know from what I know now that is often overdone. You're saying,
Right.
that, some of that may actually be too sharp, but it's because of a biomechanical issue of how the jaw is moving.
And if you'll actually reset the inclination, you'll eliminate the edge. If you come back in 3 to 4 months, yeah, you'll have something that's serrated like a hacksaw, but it won't cut you and grab onto you like a set of shark's teeth or something. Shouldn't be that way. You should be able to address. And then the other thing is that far too many times we find that the first 4 teeth in a horse's mouth have been so overdone, and nobody even really understands what the last 2 are doing. Well, after this constant, focus on getting rid of the edge thing, what you end up with is you got 2 teeth in the back that are very tall. They're like blocks now, instead of having any inclination. And I don't know, for probably the last 10 years that I practiced, all I had to do is fix those teeth, and you can fix the horse. And it would grab you that, you'd say, well, I'm not doing nothing to the first 4. Well, but the reality is, and now that we have ways to measure this, the actual occlusal height of the front 4 was way below that of the back. And even when you got the inclination set and the reduction done, you still had a ways for the front 4 teeth that had been so overdone with this theory of get the point. Well, I'm not sure anybody gets the point of how to balance the mouth, because all they do is it disrupt it. And then people get used to riding something that's out of balance and doesn't have the energy, the impulsion. You get a lot of things going on with people thinking, oh, my horse a little this, a little that. And it hasn't got anything to do with that. They're so far out of balance, it's a wonder that they get up and...
Yeah. Why is it that traditional dentistry is so focused on making the teeth smooth when they need some of that texture to do their job? Where did that come from?
Well, that's the thing. See, they got this all back assward, but that doesn't surprise me about how people sometimes go about whatever. And not pointing no fingers, but it's amazing. But the thing is, you see, once you smooth it all out and you, have this focus on get rid of the edge, get rid of the point, get rid of the edge, get rid of the point, to the point where, no pun intended, they get the idea that smooth is what you want. Well, no, the reality is all those enamel folds that are in the teeth should be there. It should be like a rasp almost, because how a horse actually masticates its food is not by cutting it with an edge, but by rather ripping the food bolus up as it spins it through its mouth. And then you have all this surface, like I say, that's like a rasp, and it is shredding the food bolus as it rotates through. So the tongue operates in one direction, we'll say left, and then the teeth operate in the opposite, whichever that is, right, left, but depending on side of the mouth. But to simplify it, it's about shredding. It's not about cutting. So again, you dove into the deep side of the pool, found out the water was cold, and you still haven't come back from that shock process, I guess, in general. Because, like, I'll have clients. I remember one time going out to dinner with a group of clients that brought all of their people, if you will, the bodyworks, the vet, the shoer, out for a dinner one night. Anyhow, this veterinarian said to me, "What do you do?" I said, "I fix lame horses." She said, "How do you do that?" I said, "I'm not sure yet, but you hang with me. I'm going to figure it out." Well, I kind of feel like we've gone through that journey because, you see, I look to get lamenesses out of horses. I look to find how to get rid of wind puffs by balancing the mouth in a anatomically correct way. Because if you have a twisted premaxilla, well, you got to start there. You don't wipe out the wedge just because you don't like the way it was built. You have to restructure it so that it has balance according to itself. Because here's a news flash: those TMJs that align with them, they're not the same as every other buddy. A balanced mouth is one thing. When it starts to skew itself, it's another thing. And we've got to address those, because it doesn't mean that because this horse has a deformation of its palatal arch and its mandible, that it can't be the fastest horse in the world. You just got to balance that. It's bent and you can't fix it. It's got a TMJ that's twisted and you can't fix that either, but you can balance to it. You're going to have to do something different than what we talked about. So you got to adjust to fit what's standing in front of you too.
That reminds me a lot of what my osteopath has told me, and that's frankly the person that helped me find this kind of care.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not about creating a textbook perfect horse. She's always stressing it's about getting that horse's body to work the best it can in its own unique way.
You brought up osteopath many different times. I've had osteopaths as well as veterinarians attend our classes. But the thing I'm getting at, this one osteopath from England, he had told me, about how, like, we see things that are on the outside that you can change, and muscles change and things like that. But I was curious, does that also happen on the inside? Well, at this one place that we had been at for about 20, 25 years, again, he attended one of the later classes, and he showed me a horse that had an asymmetrical palatal arch. But he said it could be massaged out. But sometimes, in order to do all the work that they need to do, it can kind of get the horse in a tough place because there was so much to realign in such a critical place in their body. So we took the opportunity, and I said, "Doc, if you're a betting man," I said, "I'd like that to challenge you. For the next 3 days, we're going to look at this horse." So 24, 48, 72 hours kind of idea. But I wanted to see, did the body change on the inside as well as the outside? Well, that's where I first became aware of what I was really doing was lighting up this thing called the primo-vascular system. And when you get the energy grid up, then you run a central nervous system that doesn't have any hiccups in it. And that's what people don't understand is it's like there's a grid. It's just like powering up your house. There's a grid that provides you the energy. But then the lights that you use, the power that you use, the AC that you use, that all comes on a different deal. You turn on a switch, you do something. That's your central nervous system. But that's how this all really works. And a guy named Nikola Tesla one time said, "It is not the physical that is the physical. It's the non-physical that is the physical." So if you're always trying to fix something physically, you probably got to just, go into the internal, workings and get balance.
Yeah, it comes down to more than just your thoughts on your horse. At the end of the day, it starts to get in your brain a little bit about maybe all of the medical professionals in my life are just chasing symptoms, and it starts to feel like nobody's really finding the root,
Yeah, but no disrespect for the medical profession. I mean, I don't want to, kick them in the butt and throw them over the side of the deal, because what they have done is learn how to put things back together. Operations are unbelievably fast, smooth. Recovery is huge. So on those things, great stuff. But we also have other industries such as automotive that have run on a similar principle and passed right by really understanding the whole picture before they just jumped over and did this, this, and this, and that. And now you've got a thing where, it, and I see where nutritional science is starting to come into being, and science is starting to re-involve itself with medicine, whether it be for horses, humans, you name it. Um, I got the benefit of many different supplements, for lack of a better word for them. But I got turned on to again through osteopaths, through friends that took the road less traveled, and you learn a lot. And it's
Mhm.
got a lot of value. And, I used to think that something I had to get better at was the horsemanship. But then I realized I didn't need to help too many people with that or myself. I just had to get better at being. I swore my daddy was, the guy that invented John Wayne, or John Wayne was, chiseled out after my daddy. But I figured out later in life that I need to be a better Mr. Rogers version of John Wayne, and that would help a lot of people, including me.
Ah, I like that. I've never thought of putting those two together before. What a conversation they might have.
Well, I got that idea by mentors of mine that I was lucky enough to be involved with for 30 plus years in the horse industry. And I won't drop any names, but some really big time horsemen. And the thing I'm getting at is right within that circle, I could get you both ends of the stick. How one was very physical, but not physical as far as like, I'll whip you into submission. No, that's not what I mean. But they could physically block whatever the horse was attempting to do so that the horse didn't attempt it too many times, because it didn't get the release they were looking for. But then on the other hand, you got a fella that said, well, you let the flies bite them on the inside, you touch them on the inside. I've been working at that for about 30 or 40 years after I quit rodeo. How do you get that done? And when you see these people, they pick up the horse, and the horse is no longer, the horse isn't bothered the moment that they pick up on the rope or the reins or whatever it is, because the energy that person shares with that horse. And the other thing that we learn, if we keep up with higher learning, at Cal Poly, they actually teach you today what all good bull riders and bronc riders used to know was, you got to visualize this stuff. You got to start working on it from the time you get out of the car, because that bull, that horse, that's what level they're on. Excuse the sidebar, but
Would you dive into questions about why this is so controversial to some people?
I've tried to explain it, and I find that you don't get there.
Uh-huh.
How you say, I can answer the questions, and then it's up to them. You can turn on the lights in the building, but not everybody's going to want to come in,
Yeah.
because the horse market is a tough one, because you can find more than not. Well, I've been in the horse business for X time, and I ain't never heard nothing like this before. Well, it's a shame that we don't have somebody that's 100 plus years old, because that would be appropriate. They could tell us about how, like for instance, the whole idea of adjusting incisors. Okay, they think that's some kind of a mortal sin. Well, the reason being is they retort it back to what their granddaddy told them about when they basically had people that did what they called bishoping. And that bishoping, they kind of carved out the center of the tooth, and they made it look like a baby with a cup in it. But it wasn't. It was just silver nitrate that they put in there. They darkened it. They made a dip out of it. And you bought a 4-year-old that was actually 8 years old. So I think there's a little bit of that in there. And I know that's diving off on the deep end of the pool, but it's out there. People want to know why you didn't do that or you didn't do this. It's like the instruments that we build for doing the dentistry. Like I told you, those 10s and 11s, I defy anybody with a power equipment to be getting what I just told you about. Now, as long as they continue to do that, that guarantees that what I'm teaching is going to have a value, because you got to fix that, and nobody else is. And the instruments aren't being, the power equipment, you're going to reach in there and grab a hold of a horse's tongue before you ever get these teeth done.
Mm-hmm. So that was some of the questions I had. Was why you do what you do with the incisors, and why, if you can answer that, I don't know, why the other methods do not want to adjust the incisors.
Well, because they don't know what they're doing. They're only, and I don't know how else to answer that, but they don't. See, they're doing it out of well, I did what I wanted to the back of the teeth. And now I'm going to take off the incisors same amount. So if I've got a gap of 3/8 of an inch in my back of my mouth, I'm going to do that to the front of the mouth. No, that's not it. You're trying to see, if you had a horse and you said, I need shoes put on him all the way around, what's that mean? Front and back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't do the back without the front, or the front without the back, because it's all part of itself. Well, in this case, you're operating some really high-tech equipment with the balance and the guidance. So you can balance the molars to whatever desire, whether you follow what I'm talking about or what somebody else did. But if you don't adjust the incisors, and the incisors don't look like some kind of a mechanical joint type of a thing. In other words, if there's little wrinkles or bumps in there, then that's not balanced according to the joint. See, that's the thing. Those TMJs, everybody talks about sensitivity to this, to that. Well, the reason why you're injecting that nowadays is because you've messed up the mouth. You've done whatever, and then you want to turn around and say, well, why are they doing the incisors? We never did that before. Well, no, you never did that. You never studied this, because all you got was the last 20, 40 years, whatever that is. And that happens with everything. But we'd be well served to back it up and understand it for what it's really worth, and what it can mean to the horsemen and women of this world, country, whatever you want it.
Now, one of the things that I know comes up is the use of power tools, which you mentioned a little bit, but also a lot of traditional dentistry will make a very big deal about, you have to sedate so that you can really get the mouth open and really look in there, and if you can't do that, then it's a joke.
Well, here's the thing. First off, let's clear up sedate. The drug companies and the veterinarians of this country have gotten together, and they have said that a drug called Democedan is a sedation. Well, that's an outright lie, because it is not. It is an adrenaline block and nothing more. If you read the labeling and you go to the website for that drug producer, you can give 200 times the recommended dosage and it will not harm the horse. I'm not trying to say any kind of thing about blah, 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 but this is one of the problems we have to start with, is what we call a sedation. But again, if you'd start where the horse would start, it would be an amazing thing as to how the horse will react to what you're doing. And if you don't act like you're rebuilding a 32 Ford for a hot rod, or chopping a roof, you're probably going to get that horse to get this work done without anything. And people say, how did you do that? That was amazing. Well, first off, we're doing it right compared to doing it wrong. And I don't, how do you explain something to somebody if you shy away from actually saying, hey, look, y'all, from the start, you got this backwards, okay? And if we don't turn it around and we don't talk about it, how are we going to get to first base? You know, I mean, it's like me telling you, okay, you want to learn how to ride bucking horses? Great. Get on this horse, and when he moves his body out of this chute, I want you to put your feet up on his shoulders, and that's the last thing I tell you. After that, you got a lot to fill in.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing here. It's the same thing. I mean, and you know, I remember when I first went to a dental school, I called up my wife. I said, baby, pick out a penthouse because we're going to it. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, nobody knows nothing about this. I said, they haven't figured asymmetry. They haven't figured what is balance to begin with. Not just, well, my opinion is this. Well, no, because, I mean, you know, you can put on a school, but it's not as good for the horse as it was for the person that put it on. And just because you're a veterinarian doesn't mean you should be working on teeth. That's another subject. Because I don't mean this wrong, but when you tell somebody that's very smart, and they have to be, to have learned all the things they learned and do what they do to care for all these animals, but when it comes to balancing a horse's mouth and getting it right, they don't have a clue. No more than they got a clue about coming onto a harness track and, as they call it, hanging one up so they don't interfere, but I want them to trot or pace as fast as they can. Well, those guys, they're farriers, and it takes a long time to learn that, and you apprentice to learn it, and then you become a journeyman farrier. Well, you don't look at it like it's below you, and they say that's too much, that's not necessary. Well, it's hard to judge something that you really don't know much about, other than, yeah, I saw a buggy go by me once.
Yeah. So that kind of naturally answered another question, and that was, why are some veterinarians so defensive about this? Certainly not all, but I know from experience it's hard to talk to the vet about.
That leads to what we've been changing in the last 2 to 3 years here in America. I have students that have been teachers with me for a long time, but they're changing the way the world looks at it, because there are veterinarians that are stepping forward and saying, no, that these are the only people that should be doing it. And it's not about me, it's about the horse, and it's about horses, and it's about the genealogy of horses that we must understand. But there's a fella out, and I feel pretty safe saying this, but if I get hung tomorrow, well, oh, so be it. A fella named Thomas Teskey, that's a vet from Arizona, that I remember one time I attended a holistic horse fair, and he and another gentleman, Dr. Balker, was there from Michigan. And I came walking in the door, and of course I recognized veterinarians carrying their bags and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, here's, Marshall Earp going to arrest my poor little self and not let me talk. But I came back in because he said, hey, Spencer. And I went talk with him, and he's like, no, man. He said, you're the only people that ought to be doing this. He said, I spent one day with you, and I figured out it's not about me doing it. It's about me knowing enough to get the right dentist here, get the educated dentist here. Now, there are parts of America that are waking up now, and they're all about this neuromuscular horse dentistry. Sometimes they don't want to get put to sleep about the explanation, but they want the process, and they know why they want the process, because it makes such a difference. All this stuff with hypersymmentosis, that's all man-made in the last 20 years, and it doesn't have to happen, but you got to do something different to get it back right. I've seen horses in less than 60 minutes go from a curved back to being a straight back, and then be the dominant horse back out in the corral now, not 2 weeks from now. And horses come up and try to check it out like, you somebody I can push around? Oh no, not no more. And it shows up now. You balance this horse and you get a whole nother thing, but you have to be sure that you're right about what is balance for that horse.
I'll say this, and I think you'd agree, but you tell me if you do or don't.
I'm not bashful.
The reason that can be possible. I think, some people would hear what you just said. What do you mean I turned my horse out and now they're like, they're in a different place in the herd and all these things. To me, it instantly says, oh yeah, that makes total sense, because it's nervous system based. Once the nervous system is what tells a horse they're safe, they're not safe, they're scared, not scared, they're confident, not confident. I mean, that's what it is. If you think of it that way, it seems simple, but for whatever reason, a horse's whole behavior and nervous system just isn't something that is ever talked about when it comes to dentistry,
No, ma'am. Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, like I said before, I'm not just talking about horse dentistry. I'm talking about dentistry because, I mean, in human dentistry, I've had the same thing done for my mouth that I would do in a horse's. Not the same way, because we're both different. But the big thing that everybody does wrong, again, is position. You can't tilt yourself upside down and hang like a bat and get your mouth balanced so you can walk around all day. But guess what? If we hang you up like upside down like a bat, your jaw slides backwards. Now you've adjusted it to that, not how you walk around. What we do as humans, it don't make no sense. I mean, you lay backwards. You don't lay backwards. Our jaws are forward. Now, that's the big thing that happens with ours versus anybody else's kind of way of doing it. And then once you fix that, you've got AP, anterior posterior motion of the jaw. Well, if I've got lateral translation and AP motion in that jaw, guess what I got? I got a body that'll just absolutely bend inside out itself to do whatever you want to do and take you to places you wouldn't believe. I mean, they think they're doing something big with these jumping horses. Please. They could hit the moon if you actually didn't have them so messed up in their mouth.
Now, there you were talking about how horses will often be put in positions to have their teeth adjusted, but it's not a position that we should be adjusting to.
No, ma'am, because the thing is as you raise it up, okay, and generally these are for machines, and then it's also because they want to have more sedation because they can hardly get the horse to stand still for it. But if you were doing something that's worthwhile, I think, and I say worthwhile, if you're really balancing, the horse's mouth, okay, if you're really balancing the horse's feet, you can see when the horse knows that the man or the woman that's doing it knows, because they stand still. And horse dentistry, quite honestly, should be able to be done on a horse like you shoe and trim a horse. Not every horse has to have drugs so much that, they can't stand up to have shoes put on. Some do. And for those that do, that's how it ought to be done. But what I'm getting at is there's a balance point, and that horse will agree with balance, not disagree, as long as you didn't bully him into doing it.
Yeah, and I know from my own training experience, saying all that is kind of just going on to deaf ears for some circles. Like, there's people that their horses don't stand quietly in a cross tie or tied up, whether something's being done to them or not.
Amen. Well, you have to maintain a sense of humor, because sometimes good news and education is not always welcomed with arms wide open and a big hug.
Yes, that is true. Maybe another way to say what I was saying there too is that so many people operate with horses in a way that there is no dialogue for the horse. So, it's one-sided. So if you're not already used to having dialogue with your horse, no, you're not going to notice your horse enjoy or give you feedback about their hoof care or their dental care or anything else. So that's kind of like the first step. Like, you have to be the person who is having that back and forth. It can't just be you telling your horse, because then there is no feedback. But that feedback is 100% there when you allow it to be there and you start to have that kind of interaction with your horse.
Yes, it all goes back to this right here. Um, there is no I in team, but there is a you in suck. And you got to stand up for it at some point in time and go, this isn't, I've got the height of mediocrity. Wouldn't you like to have the greatest day ever every time you went out and did something with your horse? It's possible. It's possible. It's just like going and playing golf. It doesn't have to be the beginning of a heart attack for an old man that just retired. Because they're so damn mad at the ball that won't go in the golf, and I spent all this money on golf clubs and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, but you didn't take the time to understand the physics of what you're trying to do, and therefore it's a struggle every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then, why do you do things that make you upset? If you want to be upset, I think you can go downtown and like bowl 10 frames and bust the crap out of some white pins or something. But you best find a different thing to do, because it's a lot of fun when it's all balanced. It's all, excited to see you again every day, and you're excited to see the horse again every day. And that's the other thing that you notice with our clients and such is guaranteed that horse hears your voice as a dentist coming in that barn, and you get the people would say, well, what's that all got to do with? I said, it's got to do with, hey, it's about time for my, balance, and I'm glad you're here, and it's great to see you, and let's get at it. And that's the horse's version of it. And it's you don't believe it until you see it, but seeing is believing. And there's so much there, and so much more that people could enjoy. And it's a long journey, but it's well worth the time to walk down the road, I guess I'd say, because we're now where we can share a lot of knowledge for those that'll listen, and believe in the fact that not only did we change the letter or the number 2 in front of the next century, but let's go ahead and embrace some new ideas. Maybe they are new. Maybe they're so radical you can't, stand still about it. But give it a whirl. Give it a try, because this is something that'll change your horse. You'll find out what you got for a horse, really. And I mean that in a good way, because there's a lot of little things that affect horses in their overall performance that people would just say, that's the way that saddle fits, or that bit, or, these spurs. It's like, no, it's, it's more than that. It's about keeping them balanced. Now, all of those other things, they have their time and their place, but it's with a touch. Not, it should be like as elegant as watching people dance.
Love that. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit here,
Sure.
because I haven't really even mentioned your school. I know that
yeah, we have one.
yes, you started out as the dentist and you had many years of hands-on learning. One of the things that I think is very cool about you and your school is how open you are about the evolution of what you're learning.
Oh, yes.
I think really important and really awesome. So tell us about the school and how that has changed, and
Sure.
what's going on with that?
Well, we're one of those dental schools that didn't keep going. We're right. About halfway through it, I realized, like I said earlier, that natural balance didn't have any place in the domestic horse world. Okay, it wasn't that, and so I'm a big guy. I said I was wrong. We did it wrong, and people were like, "Well, I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong all along." Well, if you don't do something and try to reach out there, how will you ever know what is right? And it's kind of like the Kevin Costner thing, if you build it, they will come. That's exactly what happened. For 20 years, we had, a school at a ranch, and it was somebody came and they wanted to whether you talked about it or not, they wanted to learn how to take off the sharp points, put it in a bit seat, and don't worry about them incisors too much, and just get the job done so I could say I went to this school. Well,
Mhm.
that doesn't work either. But what does work is this neuromuscular concept that we came up with, a primo-vascular system that up until the 60s, 1960s, nobody even knew about it because it's translucent. So it's a real invasive kind of thing. You're trying to find something that's invisible in your body, and it's connected to everything in your body. I mean, everything, bones, nerves, this, that, the other thing. You name it, it's connected to it. It runs through it. It runs over it. It runs around it. Everybody kind of familiar with acupuncture system. Well, this primo-vascular system is actually the whole of it all. So you think about that as its vast relationships, and then you go and say, no, that's a piece of this thing, and now I'm going to show you the whole thing. And that's what's so tricky about it. Now, just as of 2000, human doctors started to look at this all again. Now, the research is, slow because, like I say, you can't put dye in it and find out where it goes because within less than 3 to 6 inches of looking at it, you literally have lost what you got for dye. The one thing that does come up time and time again is if you balance the mouth anatomically correct and put inclination that was always meant to be there, and it's a necessity that you have this. And if you have it, then you have energy. And it's got everything to do with the body, and then the muscle structure is because of it. You don't just, you get better muscle as you condition, but to start with, you have better muscle and better movement. Like you have horses that, I don't want to go left. Well, they don't want to go left because they don't have balance in their mouth going left.
Mhm.
It's that simple. But, and the other thing is about the school is that this is something that you don't learn in an afternoon. You don't get like certified. We've gone to what we call brackets. You come for 3 2-week periods, and then you come to certify. As I tell everybody, it's what you learn after the first 7 years of doing this that counts. Because
Mhm.
you come, and then we have students that will come back and become instructors, and they think that, well, I know everything I need to know. Well, no, you start to find out everything you need to know when you start to share this knowledge that you think you have. Like I'm talking to you about it right now. I've
Mhm.
learned more about talking to people about this than I did probably doing it. Because
Mhm.
as I did it and thought I knew what I was doing, no, I didn't know half of what I now am aware of. And there's a lot to really fine tune and become the science of what we call dentistry. Dentistry for all species, i.e., in my world, dentistry for the horse. And it's amazing, I know we're right because a couple of years ago, I also did the unthinkable as to I followed around some students that had taken the course and then
Mhm.
just followed them around, got in the car and went with them. And found out what we needed to know and teach them was not, I say, all there. So went
Mhm.
back to the drawing board, rediscovered ourselves, and now, I mean, my gosh, we've got people going at bracket 3 and 4, which is your middle section, and they're able to go out and rebalance and change horses and change people's opinions of what is it that I want for my horse? Well, when you see this, it's like, yeah, this is what you want. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about it because the horse wants it. And there were things, well, like the idea of doing incisors first. What a crock of crap. Well,
Mhm.
it's necessary in the end run to balance it so that it takes care of the your TMJ. But the reality was that's not what the horse wants done first, because you would get horses that would sometimes let you adjust the incisors, but then they would say, yeah, no, and they'd get all, and you'd think, oh, well, that's about the sedation. And that's again goes back into why most people think I got to have sedation because the head won't stay still.
Mhm.
Well, start it by the right process and progress, and you'd be amazed. And it's all as simple as a thing called vertical points. And now people will go, well, what's vertical points? You said there was no points, there was no edge, da 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 da. No, no, don't get excited. It's on the vertical column of the upper set of teeth. But when you have a tight-headed horse or a horse opening his mouth vertically, okay, we can have balance in the horse's mouth and those points won't bother him. But you open that mouth with a speculum and start to do dentistry on him, and you haven't done the vertical points, you'll find out just exactly why you keep saying, I need sedation, I need sedation. But you take care of the vertical point first, horse will stand there and go, there's a couple other things that you ought to know about. Let me show them to you. And they'll
Yeah.
literally start helping you get the job done. Walk
I
into you. I mean, they'll walk into you. People always said about my dentistry, how do you get the horse to walk into you? I said, I don't get them to do it. I do the right thing, and then they walk into me.
I had the pleasure of watching this take place. I had my horses done, but I also had some people haul horses in, and so I got to see several horses done at the same time. And I mean, with my own horses, we had never tried to do anything like that without sedation before, and I was pleasantly surprised with how that went. And you could totally see them involved in the process. There'd be certain angles of things that you could see them kind of like helping and moving
Right,
with
right.
her to get
Yes,
things done. And another thing that I saw on some horses that did not have any sedation or dorm
right.
was horses that, like, I had someone say, "Oh, is that one sedated?" No, she's not sedated. She's literally just like feeling good. She was all finished up, and the head is dropped. She's like, "That was great."
Well, that's the witnessing of that whole energy grid, the primo-vascular system being turned on. It literally gets turned on as you align the teeth, and they do what they're supposed to. It's like taking a musical instrument that's been bashed and beaten apart, and then you restore it and you put it in its right way, and the music that comes out of it is absolutely unbelievable. And it's the same with the horse. Same with us.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to throw in, you
Yeah,
mentioned
cool.
several times natural balance. Natural balance wasn't it. Now, just for anybody who's not familiar, natural balance was the name of your school before?
Well, it was the procedure. It's just like
Okay.
now. We have the Center for Neuromuscular Horse Dentistry, because as you become aware of what the proper goal is, obviously don't keep saying that um, you're something you're not. At least I don't. And the thing is, the natural concept was that, and again, this is prehistoric horse, wild horse. The whole idea is that you don't have an ecosystem that can cause the front teeth of the horse and the molars to wear and erupt at the same rate that as they age. In other words, you get longer in the tooth. That's the wrong answer. Okay, because the incisors should have never got longer than that of a 5-year-old in the wild, and that would have maintained them. They never would have elongated, just like their feet. Nobody was out there, trimming feet, but they didn't have great big ski feet like you see some of these domestic horses that nobody shod them or trimmed them, and they've
Mhm.
absolutely, gone way beyond the time they should have. Um, so there's a balance. What is correct? And correct will lead you to it. But when we found out that obviously We didn't have to do all that work on the incisors. We didn't have to go all, out and reduce them to that of a 5-year-old. That was wrong, because domestic horses, they all have a different environment that they must live in. And whatever that is, that's what we must balance them to. And, balance in the horse's mouth. If you're doing competitive things, you need to be there every 6 months. And just do the little things and keep the balance. You'll find that you'll have a very competitive horse, whether it's doing Western pleasure or going as fast as you can, barrel racing, show jumping, whatever it might be. But the end result is, as they say, the proof's in the pudding. Well, I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I've figured out that the best way to do them is get around the very best that's doing it at the time, and then mimic them until you learn what it is. And then after you learn what it is, practice it, share it. It's like Morgan Freeman, that's his name. And he said, once you have a known ability and you're good at it, your next obligation is to share it and to hone it and to allow people the joy of a new idea. And sometimes the new idea is so old it actually seems new. But I think we need to start to think about people that think more physically than they do just academically, and that maybe there's a way to start an education. Like, what if I'd have started this whole horse dental thing when I was just a freshman in high school, and there was somebody there that actually cared enough to like carry the class, and maybe an ag teacher or something. If you started then trying to develop all this, and don't go with this is the way it's always been done and the traditional thing, because, well, it's great to have tradition, but it's also great to have the courage to go forward where no one else has ever gone with something and said, I want to create horsepower. And whether it's 4 feet or miles an hour, that's kind of been my life, whether it was a hot rod car or if it was a really fast horse. And the fact that the horse ought to be comfortable too was always there for me. My daddy and mama had dude ranches. My brother and I were jockeys. I mean, we had jobs from the time we were 5 years old. I started riding horses for my daddy, and my brother and I would ride 10 to 20 horses a day, and they may become somebody else's horse. They may become a dude horse, whatever. We'd figure that out as we went. But I remember a man saying one day, well, how old a boy are you? You're about 16. You should be going to work now. I looked at my daddy. I said, Daddy, he don't know you. I said, we started at 5. And he said, 5 this morning? I said, no, 5 years old, sir. That you were expected to be a man, do your work, and that was the cowboy world, and that's where I referred to my daddy being the John Wayne kind of guy. You got up at 5. It didn't matter the cartoons were on. I got some real exciting things. You're going to be in the colt pen with Mr. Charlie today. And he was right, and then you got to where that was fun. And it was just, almost a fairy tale like upbringing. Because like Mr. Charlie, he was the oldest living Pony Express man. He was 90-something years old breaking colts for my daddy.
Wow.
Had long gray hair. God, I remember him to this day. And them horses could be doing anything. And he'd just go, look at the athletic ability. Look at this. Look at that.
Very lovely. That is beautiful. Is there anything we've missed? I feel like we covered a lot.
I just wish that people could get, for the horse's sake, the understanding of what a difference it can make. And no matter what you do with one, it'll make a difference in whether or not you enjoy it and they enjoy it. And the end result is everybody has a great time. You'll have fond memories of what you've done for the rest of your life. I don't think we missed a lot or, skipped a lot, but there's a lot of things that you got to visit about the first time, then you cover it in another time, because that's really why, people of like minds get together for these podcasts like you're doing. And thank you so much for having me on today. I look forward to, if you ever want to do it again, be glad to do a series with you. because I feel like your head's in the right way and you're going in a good way for the horses. And we as people need to realize that there's some things we can do better, and for doing that, we'll be rewarded so much more than we ever could even imagine.
Yeah, and I think people get very defensive about these
Yes,
conversations,
ma'am.
whether it's teeth or horsemanship or whatever, all the things. People get really defensive, and it's really important for me to convey that talking about doing the best and being better and learning this new thing,
Right.
it's not about proving anybody wrong.
No,
It's
ma'am.
it's we're all trying to be better, or should be.
Right.
I think you're admitting some of those changes you made is really awesome, and that's how we all get better and have good lives together. It's not about blaming this or that, and just being open and knowing that you can practice being the quote unquote best at one thing and never change that thing. If you want to, sure, great. But I mean, we should all evolve over time. Best, air quotes there, air quotes best, should be changing all the time, and if it's not, then what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, we used to have a saying when we was rodeoing, and we always used to call it good, better, best, the best never rest.
Yeah.
And it's something that you can have for your whole entire life. It's something that hard to describe, but is it well worth the journey? Yes. And so I enjoyed the day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit TamaraLeeBarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.